And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and I know it's been a while, but it's because, to be honest, other than the biggest event in 4 years for rugby, every 4 years, the Rugby World Cup, not a lot has been going on, but there are going to be a lot of things coming up. First of all, I am going to do a Rugby World Cup recap video. Not really more of a recap video, more of a preview of the knockout stages, the quarterfinals, and it has been, though, a very, very exciting Rugby World Cup. Hope you guys have been enjoying it. Again, you can watch all the games archived and the upcoming quarterfinals on the Peacock Network, which is, not absolutely free. It does cause a little fee, but I mean, you get so much with that Peacock Network. Not only do you get the Rugby World Cup, not only will you get sevens for right now, but you'll also get all the shows that Peacock has, as well as the WWE Network if you're a wrestling fan. Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, a lot of football, Notre Dame football if you're a college fan. So there's a lot of stuff going on the Peacock Network for a very nominal fee. It's well worth it. But like I said, we do have some other events coming up as well, and I've always been about showcasing, especially when it involves Team USA. This time, it is for the women's side of rugby, and I've mentioned this before. Right now, it is an amazing time to be a rugby fan, not only because of now the access to so much rugby, but the fact that, especially if you're a women's rugby fan or a women's rugby player, there is more opportunity, I feel, now for women's rugby to take that next step to be on the same level, or at least close to the same level as men's rugby. And this competition I'm going to be previewing is kind of one of the first few steps of many steps to that pathway to making, like I said, women's rugby get up to the same level on a global aspect as men's rugby. And this is the WXV, or W15, if you know your Roman numerals, 2023 tournament preview. Now, for those who don't know, the WXV is a new global international competition for women's rugby that is starting this year. It's kicking off. It's going to feature 3 tiers. Tier 1 has some more of the higher ranked teams. Tier 2 is mid, and then Tier 3 is the lower rank. But there is a beauty to it, and there's a lot of talk about, and I'll get a little bit into it later on, and possibly, I mean, this video is so apropos with what's going on with the Rugby World Cup currently, and a lot of criticism of teams that are in the Rugby World Cup, teams that could be doing better in the Rugby World Cup, but because of the lack of competition during the off-season, during the years that there is no Rugby World Cup, there has been a lot of criticism about that lack of competition. This tournament is something that is really going to give women's rugby in all countries, for at least a good majority of countries, even lower tier countries, a chance to really compete on a yearly basis, not just waiting every 4 years for the Rugby World Cup, but on a yearly basis to raise the talent level, to raise the competition level for all nations, or at least a good majority. Obviously, we can't appease every. I mean, there is like over 100 nations competing in rugby around the world. Not every nation is going to get the attention, but a good majority of them will, especially from those lower tiers. So I'll kind of go over real briefly how the tier system works. For right now, the Tier 1, which is also known as WXV, W15-1, that tier is going to compose of 6 teams. 3 of those teams are from the recent Six Nations women's competition, which involves 6 of the top European teams. Just similar to the Six Nations competition for the men's side, you have England, Scotland, Ireland, Italy, France, and Wales. Those 6 compete on a yearly basis. And in this WXV, you took the top 3 teams that finished this recent Six Nations competition. That was England, France, and Wales. And then you coincide with them with the top 3 teams in the Pacific 4 series competition, which just started. Sadly, there is no Pacific 4 competition on the men's side. It is technically kind of a amalgam of the Rugby Championship, and then a few other teams. But for the women's, I've reviewed this before. It is Australia, New Zealand, USA, and Canada. Unfortunately, USA finished 4th in that competition this year, so New Zealand, Canada, Australia joined that Tier 1 competition. Those 6 teams will compete against each other. Tier 2 is what we're focusing on because that's where, as I mentioned before, Team USA is in. So Team USA will be in that competition. Also included in the competition are the 4th place and the 5th place teams in the Six Nations. So that would be Italy and Scotland. You have your African women's champion, South Africa. You have your Asia women's champion, Japan. And then your Oceanic champion, Samoa. So those 6 teams are going to compete in Tier 2. I'll go over exactly how they're going to compete. Just briefly mention about Tier 3. Tier 3 is going to compose of your last place team of the Six Nations, which is Ireland. And then you have your runners-up. You have your European Rugby Women's champion, Spain. And then you have your runners-up. You have Kenya, who is the runner-up of the African Championship. You have your Oceanic runner-ups, Fiji. You have your Asia runner-up, which is Kazakhstan, which is amazing for Kazakhstan because they don't really get a lot of attention in rugby, both men and women's side. And then you had a playing game between 2 South American teams, Colombia and Brazil. Colombia beat Brazil to get included in that Tier 3 competition. So, the way that it works, you have Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. They're all going to compete against each other in their tiers. Tier 2, you have your 6 teams, but they're technically in 2 separate pools. USA, Japan, and South Africa are one pool. Samoa, Scotland, and Italy are in the other pool. They will play against the other teams in the pool. I know that gets a little confusing because it's not something that's usually seen in USA-style competitions of any sport. But USA will play against Samoa, Scotland, and Italy. They will not play against Japan or South Africa. Fortunately or unfortunately for myself, as you know, I am both a Japan and America fan. So it kind of is great to see that they don't have to compete against each other. But USA will go against Samoa, Scotland, and Italy. And then, of course, these teams will go against Japan and South Africa. After the 3 weeks of competition, whatever team has the most points at the end of the competition is declared your winner in the Tier 2. Points are usually distributed by typical rugby style. You get 4 points for a win. You get a 5th bonus point possibly if you score 4 tries in a game. You could also get a losing bonus point even though you don't win if you stay within 7 points within the losing score. So whoever has the most points at the end, they are declared the winner of Tier 2, even though you don't play everybody and there isn't a playoff game at the end like in most competitions. Now, the way that it works with the tier system, there is going to be promotion and regulation. From the way it sounded, there won't be any promotion or regulation between Tier 1 and Tier 2, at least for the first couple years of this tournament, of this competition being established. But Tier 2 and Tier 3, there will be promotion regulation. The last place team in Tier 2 will play the first place team of Tier 3. Whoever wins that one will be promoted to Tier 2. Also, Tier 3, whoever finishes last in Tier 3, there's a possibility that they'll be kicked out of the competition. They'll play against the highest ranked, according to World Rugby Rankings, that's not involved in the competition, and that team will get a chance to play in to Tier 3. So this is great because, again, it allows teams that don't rank very high, that don't normally compete against higher nations, the possibility of moving up and down into these competitions facing against top talent. I mean, you just take example for USA. Granted, there is no promotional regulations between 1 and Tier 2 just yet. But in future competitions, there is the possibility if USA finishes first in Tier 2, they have the possibility of moving up to that top 1 tier, playing against teams like England, France, Wales. Those are top tier competition that normally USA would not be able to play, possibly on a yearly basis. Now, again, USA may not win those games, but it does allow them to realize their skill level and compete. Something, again, that a lot of countries in this current Rugby World Cup, like Japan, for example, the complaint is that they don't get enough time to compete against higher caliber opponents to raise up their game or to realize the difference in how they're approaching the game. and they have to wait every 4 years for the Rugby World Cup for that to finally happen. You watch the Rugby World Cup, there are some very lopsided games, like 76-0. I believe that was South Africa and Namibia. Namibia doesn't get a lot of chance to compete against these top-tier nations except every 4 years during the Rugby World Cup. And when they finally get to those 4 years, that's when they get blown out of the water. And that's why this is an interesting concept, because right now there is a men's version of this that is still being kicked around. Supposedly it's supposed to happen in a couple years. From what I understand, they're nowhere close to figuring out how to do it. But, if they can get something like that, instead of waiting every 4 years for teams like Japan, USA, lower tier teams that aren't in that top tier, that don't normally get to compete with top tier nations in competitions like Six Nations, the Rugby Championship, on a yearly basis, they'll never improve. They have to wait every 4 years, which is, the knock on why USA wasn't able to qualify for this year's Rugby World Cup, because they rarely ever get to compete with countries outside of the Americas without the random, maybe like a couple years ago we played against New Zealand and got slaughtered. But that's the first time we played New Zealand in like 50 years outside of a Rugby World Cup. So again, this competition is amazing. It's a great opportunity for women's teams. And again, you look at some of the lower ranked teams in Tier 3. Kenya is ranked 23rd. Colombia is ranked 25th. Kazakhstan, like I mentioned before, they're ranked 18th. They'll never usually get to compete against tiers like Ireland, like Spain, or Fiji. They'll never get a chance to really compete against those teams until you got to this competition. And with the possibility of regulating up to go against even higher levels of competition. So this global competition that's going to happen every year, it is a great, great thing for women's rugby. It's just going to improve the level of competition for all the teams as they start to prepare for Rugby World Cup. And from what I also understand, next year, 2024's version, they will determine qualification for the 2025 Rugby World Cup for the women. So again, even more to play for, and the more importance they're putting onto this competition. Now, of course, there is some criticism for the men's side that competitions like this take away from the importance or the uniqueness or the specialness of a Rugby World Cup. The reason why you only get to play these teams every 4 years, it makes that special rather than it happens every year. But give or take, it does help improve the quality of play for a lot of countries. Again, I'll go more into detail about that when we start talking about the Rugby World Cup and certain teams that really, really have improved their playing, their skill level, and that's because they are competing in certain competitions yearly, like this competition. So this is a great, great opportunity for the women. Now, with all that being said, let's talk about USA again. So as I mentioned before, USA will be playing 3 games in this competition. First, they're going to go against, USA is currently ranked number 7. They're going to be going against ranked number 16 Samoa, October 14th, 8 a.m. This is all Pacific Standard Time, so these are early games. So, we'll talk about where you can watch this, and you can watch it probably on delay because you may not want to wake up that early. They'll be playing against number 9 ranked Scotland, October 20th, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And in the last game, their highest level competition in this tournament, number 8 Italy, October 28th, 8 a.m. All these games you can watch, and all the games for all this competition, all 3 tiers you can watch on RugbyPass TV. RugbyPass TV is a brand new free service, very similar to the Rugby Network, that you can download the app. They show a lot of highlights of the Rugby World Cup. They show a lot of classic games, pieces of games from the Rugby World Cup, but they're starting to expand their archive, expand their showing of what games. They're going to show the entire tournament on RugbyPass TV, free and on demand. So highly recommend download RugbyPass TV if you want to watch all these games and root on Team USA. Now, let's talk about Team USA. Team USA is going through some changes. As I mentioned at the beginning of the year, their head coach, Rob Kane, stepped down as head coach back at the beginning of the year, and we've been looking for a new coach in the meantime. Rugby USA just announced the appointment of new head coach Milton Haig, who, if you're a Japan fan like myself, especially the Suntory Sun Goliath, which is, my opinion, the best team in Japan rugby, but Suntory Sun Goliath, that was the team that Milton Hague used to be the head coach of. He just stepped down after a couple years there, and he is now going to be the head coach of Team USA Women. A little bit of background on Milton Hague, former player himself. He was the head coach of Georgia for a long time, 2011 to 2019. He's actually, a lot of people credit Milton Hague, Coach Hague, for being the one that elevated Georgia's game. He coached Georgia through 2 Rugby World Cups, 2011, 2019. In 2019, they unfortunately finished 4th instead of 3rd, which allows you to qualify for the next Rugby World Cup. Granted, Georgia did end up qualifying for this year's Rugby World Cup, and they did a really great job for being a considerably lesser tier nation. That's where Milton Hague then stepped down as the head coach of Georgia, and then took on the job for Suntory back in 2020. Under Suntory, the 2020 season unfortunately was canceled due to COVID, so there was actually 2 seasons in 2022. 2021, they came up close as the runner-up to eventual League One winners Panasonic. They were then runners-up to the Panasonic a second time, unfortunately, in 2022. And then in just recently, they were eliminated in the first round against eventual Japan League One winners, the Kubota Spears. So a lot of success, though they did not win the championship under Milton Hague, but you can see the caliber of coaching from Milton Hague. So there's a lot of positivity in this hire, a lot of potential for the USA Women's to do really, really well. Not only in this competition, but growing towards the Rugby Women's World Cup in 2025. Now, let's talk about the team. I'm going to put up this is the overall 32 women's squad that is going to be traveling over to South Africa, where this competition is being held. South Africa is hosting it. They're going to be playing in Stellenbosch for the first couple of rounds at the Dame Craven Stadium, and then in the last game, they're going to be playing in Athlone Stadium in the capital of South Africa in Cape Town. So this is the 32-woman squad that's traveling for the team. And from these names, there are going to be the 15 and the 8 reserves that are going to be formed together to play in all 3 games. So literally, very familiar names in the women's system. If you've been watching women's rugby or been following my videos, a lot of these names you're familiar with. There are a couple that are new. Paige Stephanopoulos from Beantown Rugby Football Club. She got her first cap just recently when the USA Women had a test match right before this competition against Wales. Unfortunately, that game against Wales didn't go so well for USA. They lost 38-18, but Paige Stephanopoulos was able to get her first try in her debut as a USA Eagle, so that's awesome. Congratulations, Paige. And also Yeja Dunn from Beantown got her debut as well in that game. But let's go over the list of names. Katie Benson from the Sharks, one of the more veteran players with 37 caps under her career as a USA Eagles. Mona Lisa Tupou from Life West or EPA Razorbacks. Catherine Shredder from the Loughborough Lightning team. As I mentioned before, Paige Stephanopoulos from Beantown Rugby Football Club. Kea Maya Sagapolu from Leicester Tigers. Tyra Au from the New York Rugby Club. Charlie Jacoby, one of my favorite players from Colorado Grey Wolves. Haley Taofo from Beantown, along with her teammate Erica Jarrell from Beantown. Rachel Orecki from the Colorado Grey Wolves. Freda Tafuna from Lindenwood University. Georgie Paris-Redding is on this list, but unfortunately it was just announced she came down with an injury, so she will not be competing or traveling with the team. They have not named the replacement player for her, but unfortunately Georgie Paris will not be able to take part in this competition. Wishing her a speedy recovery. Talia Brody from Leicester, Rachel Johnson from the Exeter team, Yeja Dunn, as I mentioned before, from B-Town, just got her first debut cap for the USA Eagles. Carly Waters from the Colorado Grey Wolves. Tanya Tukofu from Lindenwood. Gabby Contorna from Exeter Chiefs. Maya Beiser from Ealing Trailfinders. She just had her 30th cap in that game against Wales. She is only the 13th player in USA Women's Eagles history to earn that 30th cap, so congratulations to Maya Beiser. Autumn Zaplicki, USA Sevens player. Eddie Hungatown from the Sale Sharks. Mata Higano, another USA Sevens player. Usually the consistent captain for the USA Women's team, Kate Zachary from Ealing Trailings, 32 caps under her career. Coming back for the first time in 2023, veteran Emily Heinrich from Beantown, Tess Fury from the Leicester Tigers, Bulo Toga from Berkeley All Blues, Hope Rogers returning to the squad after suffering an injury during the Pacific 4 Series from Exeter Chiefs. Currently the most tries under any active player for the USA Women's Eagles with 42 caps. Charlotte Clapp from Saracens, Evie Aschenbrucker from the San Diego Surfers, and Summer Harris-Jones from the Sevens USA Women's Team. So that is a list of players that will be traveling, and from that list, you will get your starting 15 and your reserve 8. Let's go over again the 3 games that are being played. First against Samoa, October 14th. This will be the very first time that USA has ever played Samoa, so it'll be interesting to see how that game goes down. Scotland is going to be... that will be an interesting game. Scotland has improved quite a bit. As I mentioned, they are ranked number 9. USA's overall record against them is 4-1. So possibly USA should be able to win that game, but we'll see. And then the Italy game, that one's going to be interesting. This will only be the 4th time that USA has played against Italy. USA is 2-1 over Italy, but the last time that these two teams played was during the 2022 Rugby World Cup. Technically the 2021, but took place in 2022. And unfortunately, USA lost in that game against Italy, 22-10. So this will be the revenge match, hopefully, for USA. And as I mentioned before, the highest ranked team in this competition that USA will play against. USA is just slightly above Italy, ranked number 7. So this is the competition. Again, if you are a women's rugby fan, or again, you just want to support Team USA, highly recommend you watch this competition. It's going to be absolutely free, like I said, on RugbyPass TV. And this is a great way, again, just to elevate the game of women's rugby, not only in the United States, but all over the world. Hopefully USA comes out on top in the competition. I'm also, of course, rooting for Japan as well. It would be interesting to see Japan and USA go against each other, but maybe next year's iteration of the competition. I just hope that USA and Japan don't end up on the bottom of the competition. So that is the video. Again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, hope you guys check out the WXV or W15 competition. I think this is a brilliant idea. I'll go a little bit more into details of what the men's side could possibly do, something similar to this. That too, if this becomes successful, I, highly believe that a men's version will possibly happen. Like I said, there's something in the works, or at least there's been something in the works for years now. It just hasn't come into fruition. But if this takes off, and it doesn't affect the Women's World Cup that much, definitely can see something like this happen for the men's side as well. So, anyways, that's my video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the pitch.